Good afternoon. We're very happy that you could be here today. We had expected really great weather, and we didn't get it. I'm not sure what happened, but we're going to try to do better before you leave. We promise it will be cooler. We are glad you're here today. Neighborhoods in Nashville have been a phenomenal part of the success of this city. I'm convinced that had neighborhoods not been able to organize from corner to corner in all of Davidson County, we would not be the county we are. We know that when neighbors are organized, the neighbors are happier, the crime goes down, people want to invest in it, and people get excited about it. We've got a great panel to talk today, and they're going to be sharing their experiences with you. This is actually starting a series of trainings that the Mayor's Office of Neighborhoods is going to be doing, and it's going to beginning in the spring. We're going to have a curriculum is being developed. It's going to be shared with you, and we hope that you're going to be able to participate in it. I would also like to thank all of the special people that are here today whose name may not be on a program but need to be recognized. We have alumni from our My City Academy. We have the current class of the My City Academy. We also have some very good friends from the Neighborhoods Resource Center, where I know y'all are out there somewhere. Look at that. We've got some board members. We got Neighborhood Alliance folks here. I know John Stern is still here. Former Councilman Jim Schulman is here, and he's happy to be here. So we're excited about today and really ready to go forward and have a conversation. And when I look at the panel, there are folks that I've, for the most part, had many, many dealings with over the last 15 or 20 years in sundry roles. Sam McCullough, the president of the Cleveland Park Neighborhood Association, is over there. Sam. Good afternoon. Colby Sledge from the South Nashville Action People is here. Jeff Syracuse, the president of the Donaldson Hills Neighborhood Association, and something about this hip Donaldson thing. Ruby Baker is the president of the Bordeaux Hills Residential Association, is here. David Morales, the president of the Woodbine Neighborhood Association, is with us. And Linda Peak Schatt, the founding director of the Nelson and Sue Andrews Institute for Civic Leadership, is going to be speaking. Each panelist is going to share their experience. They're going to talk about the lessons they've learned in organizing neighborhoods, organizing activities, how they've branded and organized neighborhoods. They're going to talk about how they're working to keep neighborhoods and neighbors engaged in good and bad times. And Jeff, we know about some of those, don't we? We're going to, we'll open up after the panel has spoken. We're going to let you have an opportunity to ask some questions and make some comments. Jeff Sexton is going to be working a microphone, helping us with a microphone. Karen Van Cleese from the Antioch Priest Lake is also here, I think. There she is. And she's also, and I didn't realize this, and I apologize, she's a commissioner on the Metro Beautification Commission. So Fairlane Park and Antioch is going to be well covered here in just a moment. We're going to start, because I could keep talking, as most of you know, but I'm not going to. Linda, would you start us out?
Sure, I will. I'm kind of the ringer on the panel. I am not the head of a neighborhood association, but I did help 3.5 years ago found the Nelson and Sue Andrews Institute for Civic Leadership at Lipscomb University. And that institute was founded in the hope that we would be engaged with people like you doing what we're going to be doing with you in the next year. And that is Nelson Andrews, our founder, one of the great collaborative leaders of Nashville, believed that we needed to bring neighborhoods and different sectors together to focus on individual issues and produce solutions for the common good. He believed that to do that, we had to develop individual leaders who would work together at the neighborhood level. And he believed that great communities were intentional, not accidental. And so we are intentional in our efforts in working with the mayor's office and other organizations to help develop the very best leaders we can at every level in Nashville. Nashville is an exciting place to be because the leadership is so vibrant here. the structure of things like the New Americans Council and like the Office of Neighborhoods and the activities that they have provided for you are real models for the rest of the country. And we were really, really happy to be involved in the Neighborhood Challenge. I know many of you were, and we got to work with one of the winners, Jeff Sexton, earlier this year. But the leadership training idea actually came out of conversations with Courtney following that Neighborhood Challenge. So she wants me to tell you a little bit about what the Institute does and what we hope to do with your help in designing the 3 leadership sessions in 2015. First, I think it's important to tell you what we believe is important for leadership in the 21st century, and it's reflected in all of the training we do, whether it's the Masters in Civic Leadership, the Transit Citizen Leadership Academy, or any of the other leadership academies we do around different issues in our city. And what is that? Well, first, we follow the great organizer Marshall Gantz's ideas about how you organize for change. And what did Marshall Gantz, who organized with Cesar Chavez and now teaches at the Kennedy School at Harvard, what does he say you have to do first? He says you have to know yourself individually as leaders. The second thing he says you have to do is you have to know who we are together, and so who you are as a neighborhood. And then finally, and this is the challenging part, he says we have to then decide what we can do together. And so the trainings that we would propose to offer you look at all 3 of those things with a real focus in that last one on the priorities for your neighborhood and how you can organize to meet them. Now, I told Courtney I wasn't going to get into a lot of the curriculum because you need to help us design it. And the leaders here on this panel are going to help us design it. But that's the idea in terms of the way we approach developing neighborhood, community, city, and state leaders at the Institute. Some of the other things we do is a program called Leadership Tennessee, where we bring together leaders from across the state, and we do these same things with them, looking at them individually together, and then what can we do for the state. And our students are looking at a variety of issues every year. We're now in our 3rd course, and I just want to mention 2 of them, maybe 3, that apply directly to what you're doing. The first is Kobe Sledge, who's actually on the panel here and who was in the inaugural class of the Masters in Civic Leadership. Kobe, as the leader of Wedgwood Houston, SNAP, did I get that right? Actually was able during the year that he was with us to engage the city and engage his neighborhood in taking that neighborhood association to the next level. And he's going to talk more about that. But some of the things that we did with him and that he learned from us will make its way into the curriculum as we put it together for you. Another person who I know Jeff knows that was in our program is Josh Inman from Cummins, working in corporate social responsibility there. And he organized the Donaldson corporations, Piedmont, Cummins, Bridgestone, TVA, I'm leaving somebody out, Piedmont. He organized them to actually work with the community on the community's priorities, working with Jeff and others, so that those corporations would have a more focused impact on the Donaldson community. And learning to work with the assets that you have in your neighborhood will be one of the things that we want to include in the curriculum. Because let's face it, government can't do it alone, and neighborhoods can't do it alone, and business can't do it alone. They have to all work together to bring about the changes that you want in your community. Finally, I don't think Muhammad is here. Muhammad Hassan is in the current class, and Muhammad is actually looking at how to organize in a specific community the whole notion of entrepreneurship training. And so we'll be learning and listening from him about his work in the refugee and immigrant community and entrepreneurship training, as well as some of our other students that have worked in the refugee and immigrant community on different issues. But the most important thing, and I'm going to stop short of 8 minutes because I want to hear from these other panelists, the most important thing for us is to help you in that 3rd stage. What can we do together learn how to set priorities, set goals, and set a strategy so that you can work together to actually see results, as many of the people on this panel have seen. I put some information back on the table as you go out. It will give you an idea of some of the content that we include in our community trainings. It's actually the content of the Masters in Civic Leadership. But let me say that we're going to include the resources of all the institutes at Lipscomb. The Institute for Civic Leadership, named for Nelson and Sue Andrews, is only one of 4. And we'll be pulling from our Institute for Conflict Management alums, from our Institute for Law, Justice, and Society alums, and from our Institute for Sustainable Practice alums to also staff our training for you. The important thing of what I just said, the important piece of what I just said, is that they are our alums. One of the measures of our program is whether or not we actually train leaders who are sustainable leaders in the community. And all of our alums, under Colby's direction and some of the others from the inaugural class, have organized themselves into a leaders collective. And that leaders collective will be the one that will be working with me and others to produce this training. So thank you very much. We are very excited about this. And I'll leave you with the thing that we leave our students with, Teddy Roosevelt's quote, that it's not the critic who counts. It is the man in the arena, and who fails while daring greatly. We don't expect you to fail, but we do expect you to dare greatly as you move into this next year of changing your neighborhoods. Thank you so much.
Linda made a very important comment about strategy and being able to understand, develop strategic thoughts and strategic plans and be able to how to execute. And there's 2 people in the room I feel terrible about if I don't name them before I get down, because they talk about strategy and they're both strategists and have worked hard. Chief Anderson, yes, our Chief of Police, has been as good a friend of neighbors as we could have had. He continually looks for ways to strategically work with neighborhoods. And as I said earlier, neighborhoods are successful, and when the organized crime is down, a good part of that is because the police have become our partners. And Chief, I had to recognize you and thank you for what you do. I would also be wrong not to mention that John Stern is sitting over here. John Stern and I have been chasing neighborhoods around for a long time. John strategically has looked at the city for a long time, led our activities a few years ago about the future of Nashville's neighborhoods. We're still working off of that document, and the Neighborhood Alliance is still working, trying to find ways to continue to thrive. So John, I did at least want to say that you were here in the room, and I'm glad you're here. So thank you. Now I can feel good about the rest of the day because I've done what I think I needed to do. I'm going to quit talking, but I'm going to ask Jeff Syracuse to talk a little about Donaldson Hills and what's happening out there.
Thanks, Billy. Everybody can hear me? All right. Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Syracuse. I'm the president of Donaldson Hills Neighborhood Association. My neighborhood is the largest in Donaldson. We have 504 homes. It's been quite a challenge with establishing a communications network. We have 17 households that serve as watch captains. And what I kind of want to talk to you today about is from a more broader perspective in Donaldson. I was also one of the founders of HIP Donaldson. And it's a phenomenon, really, of that it has utilized Facebook and social media to help organize communities. And now you see HIP pages everywhere from Murfreesboro over to Cookeville. There's, if you go on Facebook and you search HIP, pick your community somewhere in Middle Tennessee, you'll find it. But HIP Donaldson started as a Facebook group, but really grew beyond that. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about. Before Donaldson Hills became just a voluntary, simple neighborhood association, we were a neighborhood watch over a course of several years, and I became the leader of that group when the current leader, she moved to her childhood home of Winchester, Tennessee, and her name is Virginia Clark. She's a big influence on me, and so I was looking into how do we take this neighborhood to the next level? It was becoming more than a neighborhood watch. We were starting with block parties, we were starting with events, and things like that. And one of our real successful premier neighborhood association in Donaldson is Bluefields. It was one of the very first planned developments in Nashville during the late 20s, early 30s, and just beautiful historic homes. And what they've done over the past more than a decade, really, now is organize themselves into a voluntary, simple neighborhood association. They've done their own street sign replacement project. They've beautified their entranceways. And I said, that's the direction I want Donaldson Hills to go towards. And it was a part of a larger effort to increase home values, to have people take ownership of their neighborhoods, and what have you. So on Facebook, one of the first things I did when I joined Facebook, I typed in Donaldson. And one of the first things that popped up was this little group, about 20, 30 people, called Hip Donaldson. And I noticed that the owner of the page was a guy by the name of Andrew Bradley. Well, I knew Andrew. Andrew was the president of Bluefields Neighborhood Association. So I reached out to Andrew and I said, what is this Facebook page that you started, and can you tell me a little bit about your experience with Bluefields and organizing that neighborhood? And he said, well, after Bluefields, I wanted to stay involved in neighborhoods, but I wanted to do it something that was beyond just one neighborhood and make it about home ownership. I wanted it to be about more of a community. And so the page he developed as a way to talk about things that were going on in Donaldson, supporting local businesses, organizations, nonprofits. And the success of Facebook in our community, and Donaldson's indicative of other post-World War II neighborhoods that were developed during the time when sidewalks weren't really thought of very much. Front porches weren't a prominent feature of homes. And so what social media really became for neighborhoods like Donaldson was like a virtual front porch. You're sitting at your computer, you're talking about something going on in the community, whether it's a neighborhood watch issue, whether it's the great meal that you had over at McNamara's Irish Pub or something like that. So, oh yeah, I've been over there too. So it's almost like I said, a virtual front porch where you sit and you're talking to other neighborhoods and neighbors. So I really took the lead from Bluefields and kind of followed their model. And Donaldson Hills Neighborhood Association, over the past just 3 years that we've been in existence, has been able to raise enough money to put back in about over $15,000 of our own street sign replacement project, our own entranceway beautification, and it's been very successful in that it's attracted good neighbors to move there and take ownership of it. And again, I think one of the key things about the Neighborhood Association was it's voluntary. It's not a homeowners association where you move in and when you sign your mortgage documents, you sign up for it and then you're bound by it. This is completely voluntary, and we have just in a few years we have about 125, 130 homes within the neighborhood who have signed on to this, and it's been really effective. And so Hip Donaldson, it kind of became that connectivity with all our neighborhoods, and they're starting to learn from Bluefields, from Donaldson Hills, from Lincoln Hills is another really successful neighborhood association, and we're starting to see more organized neighborhoods with voluntary neighborhood associations pop up all around Donaldson, and so it's really nice to see. So I asked Andrew, I said, I want to help you with this. I think this is a really important tool for us to help move Donaldson forward. On Hip Donaldson, one of the biggest topics on there was, we need more restaurants, we need more retail. Why can't we get these kinds of things and what have you? And those conversations would go on and on and on. And so, I became one of the admins on the page. And one of my initiatives was really to make it more about just this virtual social media thing where people are behind a computer. It needed to be something more than that. It needed to be something that actually connected people together. And so one of the things that I started was Hip Supports Local. And it was a way of once a month going to the local Mexican restaurant, McNamara's Irish Pub, Fat Bites is another real popular restaurant there. Each month, it was almost like a cash mob in a way. Each month we would go, to put one of those events on Facebook. We would all show up, and it would take Hip Donaldson off of Facebook and get people to get to know each other, and especially the new neighbors. And what was really cool about it is that you got to meet brand new neighbors who had just moved into Donaldson, and some people who had lived in Donaldson for 50 years and just now got to know each other because that Facebook kind of brought them together. And so it became something that turned social media into more about flesh and blood, which that's what we were trying to do with HIP-D. And then I began to quantify these hip support local events that we would do. You would see how many people would come to those events. You would, figure out about how much everybody spent. And after about doing 10 of those things, you were able to show the community, look at the economic impact that Hip Donaldson is actually making in our community. It was pretty neat. One of our big success stories was Donaldson got a Publix a couple years ago. And, to be totally honest, Donaldson is not Cool Springs. We're not Green Hills. And so if you look at some of our demographics, if you're looking from a developer's perspective at Donaldson, we're median income folks out there. And so from a developer perspective, do we want to spend that much money on putting something out there or what have you? That's one of our challenges in the community. And actually one of the cool things that we're starting to see is that the median age is coming down and the median incomes are going up in Donaldson. And when Publix came in, we had heard that they were a little bit on the fence about coming in. Well, we started a big campaign, and we flooded them with messages about, please come. We do want you. We're ready to support you. This is what we've already done with Hip Donaldson. And Boyle's investment company, who owns the plaza where Publix is, they really point to that effort that Publix said, yeah, we do want to be part of that community. And it worked out. And there's been a couple other examples of other businesses who have come in because they really saw the strength of the community. Becker's Bakery was one of the oldest family businesses in Nashville. 80-some years? They were in Donaldson for about 27 years or something like that. When they went out of business, Cupcake Collection came in. They're over in Germantown. They opened up their second location in that exact spot, and they've been embraced incredibly by the folks in Donaldson, and have been a big success because of that. One of the things I think that sets Hip Donaldson apart from some of the other hip pages that you see out there is that not only did we take it to be take it off of Facebook and make it more about people, we actually established a 501. We started a farmers market. We've now become the largest farmers market in the county. We just had our last one for the season last night. My role in that is I get to book the music. We actually have a sponsor for a live entertainment stage, and I get to book the music. I work at BMI. I'm in the music business also. So it's just been incredible. We had like 70 vendors, Ace Hardware in the parking lot of Ace Hardware, and so we became a 501. We established various different initiatives under the Hip Donaldson umbrella. We had a group of people who were so passionate about pets. We have a HIP-D Lost and Found Pets page that is specifically about when you lose your pets. You post that on that specific page, and there is a group of people that will go and not stop until they find your pet, and mainly your dog. But it has actually worked out so well that we now have this community of pet lovers and dog lovers at Donaldson. We actually have a small partnership with the Red Cross about emergency preparedness. The farmers market that I mentioned is another initiative, the Lost and Found Pets. So it's, and then the neighborhood watch aspect. We also have a neighborhood watch page that helps connect other various individual neighborhood pages. And there's been a couple of news stories that have pointed out that when there has been a crime issue going on, those social media pages help catch that criminal more quickly than had they not had that connectivity with neighbors. And it's given us a really, even a deeper relationship with our Hermitage precinct, and we're very thankful for that. So that's Hip Donaldson in a nutshell. It has really, like I say, re-energized the community. It's helped rebrand us. We see a lot of new energy coming in. The growth that's happening in Nashville, of course, everybody knows is incredible, and Donaldson is seeing that. Like I mentioned, we're Our median age is starting to go down. We're becoming younger again, re-energized. But one of the coolest quotes about Hip Donaldson actually comes from one of our pastors over at Donaldson Church of Christ, Russ King, good friend of mine. He says that, Hip Donaldson has become something that's not just for the young hip, but those all the way needing to hip replacements also. It's been something that's brought everybody in the community together, and it's been a real blessing to be part of. So that's, in a nutshell, that's Hip Donaldson. Thank you.
East Nashville's still mad about that Publix. Ruby, would you talk about Bordeaux Hills, please?
Yes, I will. Is this the one I use? Hello? Hey, good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me, Mayor's office. I'm going to take you to the other end of the spectrum. I'm going to take you to Bordeaux Hills. We are in northwest Davidson County. And in our community, our Bordeaux Hills community, we have over 700 homes in our community. And I moved to Bordeaux Hills in the year 2000. Nice, quiet community. People sitting on the porch, waving as you go by, children playing in the yard. Nice, quiet place to raise my children. Then after a while, the atmosphere began to change. In 2008, it was a lot of drug activities going on. It was a lot of violent crimes happening in the middle of the day. And people began to get afraid, become recluse. In the middle of the day, you could be out playing or going to your mailbox, gunfire erupts. And we were beginning to really be recluse. And there were several that moved away, older people that moved away that had been in the community over 30 years. They decided to move away because of the fear that they felt. They did not feel safe anymore. So after a while, fear began to kind of overtake me. And I was afraid to go to my mailbox. I started going in and out my back door because I didn't want to be in the front yard and something happened. I dreaded summertime. I dreaded holidays that created gatherings because the minute a gathering happened, it always ended with the police coming, different things happening that brought fear. So I, along with several others, decided that we had had enough. So we reached out to our police department, and we had a meeting, and we started our neighborhood watch group. We began to meet. It was just a few of us that began to meet. And after a while, we began to see a change in our community. It took some time. It seemed like things got worse before they got better, but things began to change. And over a period of time, we began to feel safe again. There was increased police presence in our community, which made a lot of us feel safe. The police were patrolling our area a lot more. And I guess those that were causing a lot of the problems may have gotten older and moved on. But I'd like to think that it was because we came together as a community and decided to take our neighborhood back. So recently, this past October, I pulled a report from the police department from 2008 up to October 2014. Our neighborhood watch has reduced the crime in our neighborhood by 41%. I'm going to clap on that one. And that's because we partnered with the police department. They are there to help you, to help any community, because we have a right to enjoy our yards, sit on our front porches. We pay property taxes. And besides, in my case, I was there before they got there. So I was becoming recluse. So now I can freely walk to my mailbox. I don't have to worry about things. Now, even though we still have moments when, things erupt, things happen, but the police are right there to take care of it. So several of us now, if you were to ask several years ago how many felt safe, not one hand would go up. Now in our community meetings, when we ask that question, every hand goes up. Because they are able to be a part from the, they're able to be a part of the neighborhood watch group from the privacy of their own homes. Most of them were afraid. They did not want to be labeled as a snitch. But yet at the same time, they wanted their neighbors to watch out for their properties if they had to leave, but that barrier of fear was there. So anyway, that's one of our success stories in our community, how we came together and we combated crime in our neighborhood. And so as we continue to combat crime in our neighborhood, and we continue to partner and work with our police department, and we make our neighborhood safe and we move crime out, guess where it's coming? If you don't have an active neighborhood watch group in your community, I strongly encourage you to establish a neighborhood watch group. Don't wait until the atmosphere change or things happen, and then you try to quickly form a group. You need to develop a neighborhood watch group in your community just to keep your eyes and ears open, because I tell you, as we connect and as the other communities connect and we move crime out of our neighborhoods, I'll just leave you to think about it if they're going to come to yours. So again, that's my speech about Neighborhood Watch. And that's one of the struggles that our Bordeaux Hills community went through. And as we move forward, May 2010, the historic flood that happened, we had over 200 homes in our community that was affected by the flood. They had either major or minor flood damage. We saw families disrupted. We saw homes destroyed, not to the point that it could not be restored, because eventually every home that was affected that I knew of, that we worked with, was able to be rebuilt and restored. We celebrated milestones along the way. Whenever a home was completed, we had a dinner. The neighbors came together. It strengthened our community as to where, you know how you see that neighbor, the only thing you do is just wave. You never have a conversation with them. You just, for years, you see them and you just wave. Well, during the flood, there were several that crossed that boundary and went and they knocked on the door and they helped Miss So-and-so come, and they helped each other. So a lot of times, being a good neighbor, you don't always have to go next door, sit at the table, eat their food. Just be there if they need you. That's a good neighbor. So during the May 2010 flood, that strengthened our community as to where some of the communities, I saw them separate. And they never came back together, they never restored, but it strengthened our community. We celebrated holidays together. Of course, you know, after the May flood, you know, you had Christmas, you had Thanksgiving. So we as a community, we had a Christmas dinner, we had Thanksgiving, we gave food boxes, we had a big dinner, and it was about 200 families came out, and there were several people that helped organize it, but the majority of the people there were the neighbors, and now they had a chance to sit down at the table and talk, even though most of them lost everything, and they only had their homes rebuilt. You saw neighbors giving furniture, you know, giving clothes, giving things to the children, because we couldn't forget about the children, because the focus was on rebuilding the home. We had children that still had to go to school, they still had to move forward. So you saw neighbors, that strengthened our community. So it was just like back in the day when the neighbor would help parent a child. During that time, neighbors came together. You know, she may have been discouraged because she lost everything, so the neighbor took the child to school. The neighbor pitched in. See, these were stories that were not in the newspaper. These were stories that were not on the news, or you didn't read about it, you didn't hear about it, but this is what happened in our Bordeaux Hills community. And people that were there for 35 and 40 years, they were still there, and they're still there today. So that's the core group of our community. So we saw the crime, we went through the flood, and now here we are, we're like, where do we go from here? So we saw where we were, and we know where we are, but now we had to create a vision of where we're going. And that's what brings us to the Nashville Next. It was such a perfect timing for our community because this Nashville Next process, the survey that they had where you get to select your preferred future, we took that survey and we did it as a community group. So it was about 30 of us in the group. We had food, we talked through the survey, and what that did for our community, it put us on the path of trying to create a vision for our community. Even though we were selecting things for the preferred future of Nashville, it caused us to focus on our individual community, what we want to see stay and what we'd like to see change. Even though we know we're expecting this influx of people in Nashville, and it's a diverse group of people that's coming, we can't say, no, don't come over here, because we have to place them. So what we're doing is, okay, they can come here, and where will they go? So we're adjusting, we're trying to get ready to accommodate those that may come to our community, because it's not just us, we're over here in the corner tucked away. These people that are coming will be spread out all around Nashville. So we're opening the door, but at the same time, we're trying to be more involved. We'd like for them to come, we like new homes, we like things remodeled, so we're taking advantage of this Nashville Next opportunity so that our community voice will be heard on what we'd like to see in our Bordeaux Hills community as Nashville moves forward, so there will not be a community left behind. And one thing I want to mention too, back in 2003, we used the Metro Codes Department's notice program, and we wanted to clean up our neighborhood. We saw some homes that needed some attention, and so it was kind of like an eyesore to some, but we didn't know the circumstances inside that may have prevented that homeowner from making the necessary repairs. But what we did was we took the information from that notice program and we canvassed our streets, and we identified the homes that needed roofs, gutters, windows, that had inoperable vehicles in the yard. So we took all of that information, and rather than quickly turning it into codes so that owner could receive a notice violation, we decided to use that as an opportunity for community projects. Now, that's not to say that there's some homeowners that neglect their properties on purpose, but this gives us an opportunity to help the neighbors and give the businesses an opportunity to support and donate. Like for instance, you have the houses that have cars in the front yard that's inoperable. You know, cash for junk cars. You know, that gives that business owner an opportunity to get a junk car, and it gives that homeowner an opportunity to get a little money in their pockets as well. So we looked at those different violations, and we tried to see how we can create a community project. There are homes that did not have house numbers, and you could not identify them. We didn't know the house numbers, and that's not only a violation, but that's a problem, because in case of an emergency, you know, or what have you, you're not able to send an ambulance because you don't know the house number. So that's not only a code violation or a type of violation, but that's also put that family in jeopardy in case of an emergency. So what we would like to do is, what we're going to do is offer some numbers. You know, we'll approach that homeowner, we'll knock on the door. At our community meeting, we notice that there are not any numbers on your mailbox. We'd like to help by making this donation. And at the same time, we'll invite you out to our community group if you choose to be a part. So those were just some of the things that we decided to do. One thing that came from that neighborhood audit that I'll never forget is, you know, we are creatures of habit, and we'll go the same direction all the time. I go down the street, make a left. On my way to work, I go the same way, and I see the same thing. I never ventured over on other streets to see what was happening or see what's down that way. During that neighborhood audit, as we canvassed our streets, we literally walked our streets. Some were able to drive, but we walked our streets, and we went over on other streets. Some of the neighbors ventured over on other streets. We teamed up, and when they saw just going the next street over, it changed their perspective of the community, because the path that they took, they thought, this is what the community looks like. This is bad. This is terrible. But they begin to see, no, that's not happening on the other streets, and that's not happening all over. So it changed the perspective. And at the same time, it restored hope that, you know what, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. And it dispelled the negative doubts about the future of our community, because some people say, oh, it's just bad, it's just going down, it's just terrible. No, it's not. When you look at it from a different perspective, and that's what that neighborhood audit did. It allowed us to be able to look at our community from a different perspective. So now the same core group that's been there from the beginning, been there through the flood, they were there through the crime, and they were even there before I came to that community, because they had the city dump that was in that community. So there were sane people with all of these struggles and challenges that were still there, and to this day are part of the Nashville Next to help us create a future, to create a vision for our community. And so with that being said, and I think my 8 minutes are up, so I would like to say that I saw on the notes that they asked the important resources for our community was the Metro Nashville Police Department, was MDHA through their grant program, Community Development Block Grant Program, and the We Are Home program. Another important tool was the Metro Codes Department and the Metro Planning Department with this Nashville Next program. And so the last question that asked, do we feel connected to Metro government? Absolutely. We cannot be a community without the services of Metro, the public services of Metro. So that's a little bit about our community in Bordeaux Hills.
As she was talking about codes, I noticed that Ron Mitchell was kind of swole up over there saying, yeah, we were there.
Yeah.
Codes does great work. Thank you for being here too, Ron. I'm going to quickly go over to Sam McCullough. When I moved into East Nashville in 1986, I just knew there were just 3 neighborhoods in East Nashville that I knew about, and I lived in one of them. And a little bit later, I met Sam McCullough, and he said, Billy, we've had neighborhoods in East Nashville since before you even knew there was an East Nashville. Because Sam said he was there when he helped Robertson come across the river. So, Sam, please tell us what it was like on that Christmas day so long ago when you came across the frozen river.
When we crossed the river, and it was frozen solid with my great-grandparents. Hi, you all. I'm Sam McCullough from Cleveland Park. Just a little brief history about myself. My family has been in the East Nashville area, in the same area, since 1898. My great-grandparents came here. We purchased our old family home over on North 8th off Main Street. They affiliated with the First Baptist Church, East Nashville, where we have the longest membership of anyone in the church, 119 years. So, needless to say, my roots are East Nashville. I live, breathe East Nashville. I was born at Meharry Medical College's campus at Meharry Hospital. My parents brought me home to what was the old Howerton Street, right off of Main. And we moved over to Cleveland Park in 1960, which was really a nice little, quiet, beginning to mix neighborhood. And everybody knew one another. Either you had lived somewhere kind of around the area and urban renewal brought us over to that area. People enjoyed their property, enjoyed their homes. And at some point in the 70s, things started to go downhill for us real fast. And it became entrenched with drugs, prostitution, gambling, The 80s brought along the crack houses, and things just went from bad to worse. And basically, we were pretty much in despair. People had stopped really visiting one another. Walking in the neighborhood was an unheard of thing. It's just something that you didn't do unless you wanted to get shot. Wake up on the news, to the news in the mornings, and you'd hear of a body on the corner of North 7th and Evanston Avenue that was shot during the night, and he was still sitting in his car. This was a norm for Cleveland Park. And there was a meeting in regard to some block grant money. And out of that meeting, the things that kept coming up and were needing to be addressed were things that could not handle, that we had to form something else in order to even work through getting our block grant money. And Cleveland Park Neighborhood Association was formed out of that. And to this day, I think Billy Fields had something to do with this. I ended up being elected to be a spearhead person, a point person, and it just stuck all these years. And we have evolved now from that horror story that I just told you about into one of the hottest little trendy spots in Nashville. We were able to work together with the help of the Neighborhood Resource Center. We had a person that worked and lived in our community. Carol McCullough was our representative with them. And we worked with them. We partnershiped with, once we got educated on what we needed to do through the Neighborhood Resource Center, we partnershiped with all entities of metro government. And Commander Baker, who is retired, worked with us. Basically, he baby-stepped us all the way through. We had major crime problems, and he was at every meeting and taught us how to look for crime, what to do, how to report. And older people were afraid that if they told, they would get hurt. But once they learned you can be anonymous and in your house, they were calling every day. And that group of people, they said, how'd you do this, how'd you do this? I said, I didn't do anything, I was at work. I work full time every day. My parents are retired, but I'm at work. It was that age group that was at home looking at what was happening. Oh, that boy is going in that house next door. Let me call. And once they felt comfortable, it opened up a whole realm of security and respect for, this is my neighborhood and I want it back. And I'll never forget, Channel 5 wanted to interview me, and I said, no, you need to go down the street and interview Miss Baker. And Miss Baker on TV said, I'm so glad I can sit on my porch again. I paid for it, I worked hard to pay for it, and I'm sitting on my porch enjoying it, because 2 years prior, they found a dead body laying in front of her house when she walked out that morning. Wow. So we had a lot of issues going on. And what has happened through all of our work, the neighborhood has evolved into now a mixture of the new and the old. And we're trying to strike a balance. We are being looked at as one of a fast gentrifying neighborhoods, but we're still keeping our people engaged. Our neighborhood association still has a lot of the original members, those who are still alive and able to go. They still attend on a monthly basis. We've been in existence now 13 years? 13 years now. And we're proud of that. And Mayor Dean came down to celebrate our 10th year with us. And it's been a struggle, but to see it becoming a vibrant area again, things cleaning up. And it's the work of the old people that formed Cleveland Park Neighborhood Association and those who started moving in during the transitional change, and those that have come in when things are pretty good. I mean, it's not crime-free by any means, but we still have our issues, and we're hoping that as we all work together, we'll continue to grow and to make it a community that everybody is still engaged, involved, and continue to get the things out there that we once had. Because at one time when I was a kid growing up, you didn't really have to leave that area for anything. Between McFerrin Park and Cleveland Park, you had grocery stores, five and dime stores, hardware stores, dry goods stores, the Wilson Street corridor in McFerrin Park, and the Dickerson Road corridor that ran through Cleveland Park and McFerrin Park, Lishie Avenue, which ran through both. You pretty much could find almost anything that you wanted right there without ever going downtown. Downtown was the hot spot to go to back when I was a kid, unless you wanted to just go down there for Christmas and see all of the window decorations and all. But everyday living, you had that little places to eat and everything. We're getting that back, and I hope that everyone will still continue to try to work together and to bring some of those things. And as far as maintaining our identity, I think that Cleveland Park is going to always have its own little flavor. Yes, gentrification is something that we are working with and trying to work through. But the one thing that's different, and I can definitely say this because I've been there for over 55 years, is that we have a lot of homeowners that are not renters, that have had family property, and everything they do is right there. They're true East Nashville, and they're not going anywhere. They've called me in concern, and we've met about it, and I've sat on different panels and talked about the different changing in other areas. But I feel like Cleveland Park is positioned for a balance of old, new. Anybody who wants to come out there is welcome. And we're always hoping that when you come, you'll get involved and be engaged. We had a wonderful Easter egg hunt of over 400 people out in Cleveland Park. And to look at the pictures now, that and all the kids and everybody, it was a diverse Saturday. And some of you all were there, and if you remember seeing the crowd, it was one of the most diverse crowds that I'd ever seen there that morning in my life. And that's a lot of seeing, because like I said, I was there when they built the park. And so I think that we're going to be in good shape. I think that there's a point that we're reaching as far as people know this group of people, they're going to be here. And we're going to work together, and we're going to try to always strike a balance and embrace the old and the new. But I always tell people when I do anything, you don't know where you're going unless you know where you've been. So I'm trying to teach the new people some of the history, and maybe the reason why Miss Old Jones over there said what she did is because this happened, and we don't want to repeat. And once people are educated on what happened, when you know better, you do better, and you won't make the same mistakes again. That's a little bit about Cleveland Park. My take.
It's good to be old, isn't it, Sam?
Say what?
I mean, you've been there. You saw it.
Been there, done that, saw it. I remember when you used to have the dinosaurs roaming around.
Yeah,
you know,
I believe that.
They went down Church Street.
Sam, you and I are the dinosaurs in East Nashville now, I'm
Yes,
afraid.
Lord,
but
we
that's
are.
okay. Our next panelist moved into an area of town that I don't think anybody ever thought anything could happen to. And I mean that, because if you had seen it 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you'd say, well, no, we're not going there. But together, they've done really good work, and I think he's going to share what he's seen. He's going to, he probably won't, he could mention Andeo and some others that were the early champions over there. They're gone now, but people like Colby have come up. So Colby, would you talk about SNAP?
Sure, absolutely. Good afternoon. My name's Colby Sledge. I've been a member of South Nashville Action People in Wedgwood, Houston, which is an old yet somehow relatively new neighborhood, in the sense that Wedgwood, Houston proper hasn't really existed for more than a decade, really, the name itself. If you want to ask me what some of the other names were considered, I can tell you afterward. So SNAP was formed about 35 years ago, in part by somebody I think many people in this room know, Mike Hodge. And Mike has been a phenomenal ambassador for our neighborhood through good times and bad, and really has helped shepherd SNAP long after he moved out of the neighborhood. And how SNAP formed was there was a bar or a tavern or whatever you might call it that was extremely problematic for the neighborhood. People were getting shot and killed there. It was a constant hive of crime. And everyone knew this spot was the problem spot. So neighbors got together and essentially bought the property from the bar owner and turned that bar into a community center. So that place today is still where the community center is. We've had it redone through a community development block grant. You would not recognize it from what it was 35 years ago. And so we have kind of the evolution of it posted on the wall in our community center. When they were redoing it, they were taking stuff off and found the black glitter walls that have been part of the tavern. So that will tell you kind of the era in which it was. So we have changed rapidly throughout the last several years. And just as a reminder, where we are is right near Greer Stadium and the fairgrounds. We're kind of in between the two. That used to be the county-city line. I mean, we used to be rural. We have pictures from 50 years ago where we were farmland. And now we're in the urban core. We are an urban downtown neighborhood almost, and we've seen the changes that have come along with that. I was asked to talk a little bit about kind of how long-term and new residents have been involved. SNAP has had its ups and downs just like any neighborhood organization would. We are a neighborhood association. We're not a homeowner association. And when I came in, my wife and I moved there 5 years ago. It was in one of those periods of transition. The neighborhood is about 450 homes, and we have a lot of industrial land in especially the northern part of the neighborhood. And we've had a lot of industry that has left, to be quite honest, just as the economy has changed. So we came in and we were trying to figure out as a neighborhood who and what we wanted to be. During those changes, we began to see sort of the renaissance of downtown, not only downtown Nashville, but urban areas throughout the country. And as people began to move back in because they didn't want a 25 or 30-minute commute, they didn't want to really get in their cars that much, they wanted to be close to where they worked and where they lived and where they played. We were perfectly positioned to do that, but we had to have the structure and the capacity to be able to welcome new people in while still reminding ourselves that long-term residents are what made our neighborhood great. We have residents who have been there since the SNAP was formed, and our board right now has people who have lived there from 6 months to 63 years. So that'll give you kind of an idea of our neighborhood has been a place of permanence, but we are now going through a lot of transition. So how do you deal with that? How do you work through that? Well, we had to work through our identity, and one of the biggest things that has shaped our identity in the last several years is the artistic community. Artists need space, right? They need space to create. They need space a lot of times that's relatively cheap. And so we were perfectly positioned to be able to provide that space because we had a lot of industrial land or industrial buildings that were going unused or that were severely underused. And so we have a lot of folks in our community who have banded together and created what's called Arts and Music at Wedgwood Houston, where every first Saturday of the month, just like downtown, so tonight, we have an art crawl where we celebrate the different artists that are throughout our community. And these are people who live in our community, as well as folks who live all throughout Nashville, who have come from other cities and areas across the country. And they come to our neighborhood because they can sense that there's a culture and a vibrancy that they want to be a part of. So our role in SNAP is to both kind of really promote that, but also bring people who have a passion in one particular arena into the neighborhood and encourage those passions throughout what happens in the neighborhood. One of the questions that I was asked is how we deal with growth and development. And we are going through a huge boom in growth and development. The funny thing is, though, you can't really see it yet. What's happening is we have a lot of developers who are beginning to work on those industrial lands where there's nothing there right now. They're gravel lots or they're just old buildings that don't appear to have anything in them. In the next 5 years, we are going to triple the number of units in our neighborhood. And that is because these large tracts of land are being developed. Well, there's positives and negatives to that, right? And the key for us has been we want to ensure that whoever wants to be in our neighborhood, if they want to be there and they want to be active and they want to be in Nashville and be in Wedgwood, Houston, we want to provide a place for them. That is a large range, right? Because we have a lot of renters, because we have a lot of artists, we have a lot of folks who need a range of pricing in housing, who need a range of facilities. And that has been a major, major point of discussion for us over the last year. We have worked intensely with the planning department. We have worked with the developers themselves, and we kind of surprise a lot of developers when they come in because they look at wanting to do a certain kind of things, and we say, no, we need something else. We need more, to be quite honest. And developers aren't used to neighborhoods saying we need more. And so we have worked with developers to provide a range of housing, and we're really excited about what we've been able to do because we hear from artists, we hear from long-term residents saying, I need this kind of housing, and we go to the developers, and developers say, yeah, we can do that. This summer, we created what we call the Neighborhood Council on Affordable Living because we have been asked, essentially by developers, what is it that you want in this community? So over the course of 3 months, we sat down and we did work sessions with 20 people, both residents and experts throughout the city, on 3 main topics. It was housing, it was economic development, and it was what we called sustainable living. That last one encompasses a lot of things like infrastructure and streetscapes, tree canopy, all the way to food access. And what we did is we compiled a report that we then gave to these developers. And literally when we sit down with developers to start going through applications and what they're looking at for zoning, we point to what's in our document and say, let's work through what's in here and see what we can do. And that's what I would encourage anyone who's in a neighborhood organization to do, is to find the common goals, especially if you are going through a large transition like we are. Find the common goals that are among long-term residents, new residents, business owners, whoever it might be, and then articulate those, make them very concrete. We had a very kind of eye-opening discussion within our neighborhood about what it meant to be affordable in Wedgwood, Houston. And we were talking about numbers. We were talking about percentages of median income. We were having discussions that were on a level that 5 years ago our neighborhood would not have had, not because people didn't want to have them, but because we had not built the capacity to be able to have those. We have people involved in our neighborhood now who are architects, who are planners, who are nonprofit leaders, who are business leaders and entrepreneurs, people who have expertise in the very arenas that we need in order to create a sustainable neighborhood. So one of the things that I would, if you leave with me today, I would say if people have a passion, promote that passion as much as you can. Find an avenue or an arena for them in your neighborhood that they can flourish in that passion, because if they see progress there, then they're much more likely to be involved in the neighborhood as a whole. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing people who came in thinking, I care about X, but as they see progress in that one subject, they're getting involved in so much more, and it's making our neighborhood great as a result. So I really appreciate the opportunity to speak about Wedgwood, Houston. If you can brave the cold tonight, please come out to the art crawl. And I will say one last thing about Nashville Next, because Ruby brought it up. I have the privilege of being able to work on community outreach with Nashville Next. And Jeff and Ruby in particular have been rock stars in that whole process. The next community meeting, if you weren't able to make it out Thursday, is Monday. It's at Whites Creek High School, and we will be talking about community plans. I will say, even as an involved neighbor and resident, I wasn't quite sure what my community plan said. We are going to be talking through those. We have 4 meetings left, the first of which is at Whites Creek. So please encourage your neighborhood associations to come to those meetings. You can find the locations and times at nashvillenext.net. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Colby. Is Gabby still over there?
Oh, absolutely.
Are they still serving hamburgers?
Yeah, they are indeed.
It's your turn to bow, you know, and you haven't called me back. If you hadn't been to Gabby's, go to his neighborhood, have a hamburger. Great place. Last but not least on our panel today is a fellow who's been working a long time trying to find ways to bring neighbors together, keep the community going. David Morales, I know you're going to talk about Woodbine. You might talk about My City Academy too. I don't know.
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you.
Talk about that.
David.
So, good afternoon. My name is David Morales. I am president of the Woodbine Neighborhood Association. Can everybody hear me? Okay. The Woodbine neighborhood is the area basically from 440 to Thompson Lane, Nolensville, Pike to East Thompson Lane. It's that area between those four roads that is our neighborhood. And we are a very interesting neighborhood. We are a combination of urban, suburban, and very suburban. We have lots on the side close to Nolensville Pike. It has there are houses with lots of less than 1/8 of an acre. And on the other end towards Interstate 24, we have lots that are about an acre, in some cases, 3/4 of an acre. So we have this combination of urban, suburban, and we also have a combination of populations. We are a neighborhood that for many years has been a destination for immigrant population. Actually, Woodbine is the beginning of that Nolensville corridor that is wrongly called, I believe, Little Mexico. Nolensville Pike is, if you go down there and go down slow enough to notice the businesses, is a combination of the entrepreneurial spirit of the immigrant population. You find not only Mexican businesses, but Salvadoran businesses, South American businesses, Middle Eastern businesses, Far East businesses. We have a whole gamut of things. If you go down that corridor, you'll notice all the variety of international restaurants, international stores, etc. These populations, these different immigrant populations, were the ones that came into the neighborhood when it was down. Probably about 20 years ago, it was a rundown neighborhood. It had a bad reputation, and it was going through that transition that neighborhoods go through. When they become old, when the children that grew up there move out, they go to the suburbs or greener pastures or whatever, and the parents stay there, they age, and the neighborhood starts kind of declining. It starts losing its vibrance. There start to be availability of cheap homes because people really don't want to move there. That's what we went through. And so a lot of immigrants moved there. Traditionally the neighborhood had been a neighborhood of immigrants, but immigrants that came from other parts of the state. They came here to work in the train, with all the train yards that are nearby. So it's always been a neighborhood of immigrants, but now the population that moved in was an international one. We have now that complication of having to bring together a native population, the people who have lived here, who speak English, who grew up in this country, and the immigrant population. How do we bring them together? How do we work with them so that they can find a point in common and start sharing the responsibility and the privileges of living in a community? And that is a challenge we are facing and we will continue to face. I am myself an immigrant. I came from Mexico. I grew up in Mexico. Most of my life I lived there. And I came to this country with my wife 16 years ago. We moved to Nashville 15 years ago, and we moved to Woodbine 11 years ago. This, as an immigrant myself, I've been able to notice more deeply this disconnect that there is between the native population and the immigrant population. And this is a difficult bridge to gap. Immigrants, and I can tell you from my own experience, I come from a country that is fairly advanced. It's a big economy. We're one of the largest economies in the world. It is growing. I had always lived in a middle-class neighborhood. I lived a good life. We never wanted for anything. And it's a good country. Nice people, great food, etc. But we have one problem. Our problem is our trust in government. We have a huge issue of corruption. We have a huge issue of not trusting institutions, and of the institutions, the public institutions, working for their own benefit, not for the benefit of the population. And that is one of the things that I was asked to talk about today. I have been, since we moved to this country, I have been involved in understanding the civic aspect of life in the United States from the point of view of an immigrant, but also the mechanism, the participation, the involvement, the integration of immigrants to our community. And that's one of the things that has been difficult to work with, is the distrust or the lack of participation, civic participation of the immigrant community. We have a situation where people don't trust the government. The immigrants in general are coming from situations where they were either persecuted or they were leaving their countries for economic reasons or to look for a better life. Usually it's political migration or economic migration. And they all come from places where they cannot trust the institutions, where you cannot really go to the police and trust that they will do something. Sometimes the police is your enemy. How do we get populations, that population of immigrants, to participate in the civic process and start taking ownership of their citizenship in this city? That has always been a difficult area to work with, and I'll tell you, it's very hard. It's very hard to get immigrant participation, but in the civic process. But one of the good steps that was taken was that Nashville, the city, has taken as an initiative of the mayor's office. The My City Academy project has been, I think, instrumental. I was with the second generation of My City Academy last year. There's a new generation that is graduating today, so this will be the third time it is done, and I hope this process continues and grows. When I was part of it, it was mostly immigrants that were in My City Academy, and the purpose, as I understand it, was that to get the immigrant population to understand the civic process. My City Academy is open now, and anybody can participate. And what I think is a good thing, because it will help bridge that gap, get people talking, immigrants and native born people of the United States, participating in the same process, understanding how our city works, how the government is important for our lives, and how much the government does for us. My City Academy takes you through that, and it's been, for me, it was an eye-opener. It made me understand all the different responsibilities and all the different powers that the city has, and that we can use and that we can push to be to get the help from the government that we need to improve the situations in our neighborhood. One will be, for example, the way how we were created. The Woodbine Neighborhood Association was started off as a neighborhood watch. We organized to because we had a problem with crime in a particular part of the neighborhood. We had a house where there was prostitution going on. We had drug dealing happening there. And it was a street that had a series of conflicts. So the neighbors organized to try to help this, and we achieved a lot. We got rid of that house where all these things were going on. It got a developer to buy property on there, develop it, and get it, change the state of it. And from there, we turned into a neighborhood association. Our first meeting, as a matter of fact, as a neighborhood association, our meeting had to do with the issue of integration, and we worked with the people of the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition to put together a welcoming talk. Welcoming talks are that the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition organizes are precisely to try to bridge the gap, get people, local people who grow up in this country to understand the immigrant and the immigrant to understand the Americans. Try to integrate and get people to talk about that and come together, basically. That was our first meeting, and that's kind of set the tone of what our neighborhood association does. One thing I will tell you about neighborhood associations is the bigger the conflict there is, the more people come up to your meetings. That is a fact. And so we have been through our series of conflicts. There's always the issues of codes. There's always the issue of development that we don't want. We get dealt blows every now and then. We had, for example, one of the big problems of the Nolensville corridor is the businesses that have to do with cars and payday loans. And those are businesses that everybody says they don't want, but it's almost impossible to avoid getting them, especially on a road like Nolensville Pike. Our problem on Nolensville Pike is that perception that it is a place for pawn shops, payday loan places, and car businesses. And that is reinforced every time a new business opens. Problem we have is every time we did a step forward where throughout the city there was a ordinance that stopped these businesses from coming up in these avenues like Nolensville Pike, and that was gotten rid of last year. And for reasons I don't know, but the council voted to eliminate that. And immediately we started getting new car businesses popping up. So the challenges are to change the perception. How do we get investors to come in and open something that is different than a car business or a payday loan place? And you have to look locally. We have recently, a few months back, early summer, the Woodbine Coffee Company opened. The business had been trying to open for more than 2 years. And it's in a very nice old building. It has a lot of charm. It's right on Nolensville Pike. It's a very convenient location. But there were all kinds of hoops the owner had to jump through. All kinds of bureaucratic issues that he had to deal with. And one thing that he and I discussed was the fact that it's so easy for a business to, for a car business to open, and so difficult for a business that is a lot more desirable and it's a lot more community-based to open. He had to jump through so many hoops, parking spaces, other things, and that other kinds of business don't have to jump through. And that is always a challenge. But this investor, this owner of the business, has decided that that was a good area to invest. And I think it's testimony to that right after he opened his business, another coffee shop opened right across the street, less than a quarter mile down the road. So we've gone from being destination for nobody, car lots and pawn shops, to a place that has 2 coffee shops that are keeping quite busy. They're doing well. And part of it has to do with that desire of the investor to come in and stick with the neighborhood, to do something that is for the neighborhood, not for their own pocket or for their own, or for a stop and go, kind of place. We think we've discussed that, and we think that there is a necessity to change the way Nolensville Road works. And that's one of the jobs that we're doing as a neighborhood association. We are trying to change the dynamics of Nolensville Road, change the speed on the road, change the landscape, because we need to get people to pay attention. If you notice any of the roads, the big roads, the big avenues that we have, the Pikes, Dickerson and Charlotte and Nolensville, they all have the same problem. They're all full of car businesses and pawn shops, and people just drive through them because when you drive through a neighborhood fast, you don't notice what is going on. To be able to, for people to notice small coffee shops, to notice other things, we need to reduce the speeds of the roads, for example. Make it attractive for people to go down more slowly and notice what is going on. That is one of the challenges we're having and that we're working on. Another thing that we're working on is the issue of sidewalks, and I think everybody has that. But I think we're doing good progress on that. Now, I was asked to explain a bit why or how we have been able to work with the immigrant population and local businesses and all that. And what we've done basically is open a space on Facebook and on other social media for people to talk. We have a pretty active Facebook page in our neighborhood association and also for the district, the council district. They're quite active. There's a lot of things going on there. And there we find out about the conflicts in the neighborhood. One of them has to do precisely with immigrants. It was a recent issue that we had with a Coptic church and a neighbor who was complaining about the children at the Coptic church. And one thing we noticed was that that we were hearing the side of the neighbor who was complaining, but we were not hearing the side of the church. And we went to the church and talked with the members of the church and found out some interesting things. First of all, they have a church, Coptic, Christian Coptics, have a church in our neighborhood. They have 5 more churches throughout the city. But the people who attend the church don't live in the neighborhood. That's an interesting thing. So they're not as involved. They don't get as involved in the issues of the neighborhood because they are only go there as a congregation. And we have other kinds of immigrant churches in the area, but we try to work with them to try to understand their point of view and try to bridge the problems with others. I believe I'm going over my time right now. I haven't been keeping track of it. But I will add a couple of things more. What did I, and I'll finish. I was asked to talk about what my city academy did for me. It made me understand what the city represents for a citizen, what it does for a citizen, and how a citizen can use and work with the government. It's helped me particularly establish bigger links with police, with codes, with other institutions that are part of that have to do with the working of our neighborhood. And the other one is to talk about why or what it is that I would like to see that happens with the people who are here today. The people who are graduating from my city academy are going to be in a unique position to be bridging the gap, to be able to talk with neighbors from this country, from other countries, and get them to understand that civic participation is very important, that it's very important to be involved in our neighborhoods and in our government and in the civic life of our city. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Let's thank the panel for everything they've done today. Thank you. We had really hoped to have a few minutes to talk, but the truth of the matter is we've run out of time for that. But what I do want to encourage you is there are surveys that are available. I think they're either at your seat or on the table at the back. Please take time to fill them out. If you do not have time today, go online and fill one out.